Today on the podcast, we're going to be addressing the question of what are you doing when nobody is watching and why it matters so much. So let me set the stage for this a little bit. We live in a social media world where we are always seeing other people's results, their highlight reels of life. We see pictures of fit and healthy people and think, why don't I look like that? We see other people's success and wonder, why am I not more successful? We see other people smiling and having a good time with friends and wonder, why am I so unhappy and lonely? All this comparison leads to constantly feeling behind in life and that we're not enough. Even when we have success, we see that person who has more success. There is a far too prevalent feeling of not enoughness in our culture, that we are not enough and that other people in their lives are simply better and easier. And that's simply not true. The idea that other people are better or smarter or more capable than you and that is why they are more successful or happy is simply not true. But it is understandable where this all comes from because you don't get to see what other people do when nobody is watching. You don't see their struggles with their mental health. You don't see their struggles with food and exercise. You don't see their failures with one business idea or another. What you see is the end result, or at least the current end result. You don't see what they overcame. You don't see the work they did and the decisions they made and the hours they put in when nobody was watching. So today, I'm going to challenge you to ask yourself the question of, what am I doing when nobody is watching? And you're going to have to answer it honestly if you want your life to get better and you want to continue to grow, which I believe you do. If you want to achieve more in life and have more money or wealth or freedom, or you simply want to be happier or healthier, which in my view is the best way to measure success, you're going to have to answer this question honestly and probably frequently, because it is a powerful question for aligning our actions to what matters. Once you do, and once you start paying attention to the things that you are doing when nobody is watching, you'll put yourself on a path to creating a life you love. So let's go. First off, I want to say thank you to all the new people who are joining us here on the podcast right now. I know we've been reinvigorating this podcast over the last month and working hard to be able to provide more and more value to all of you. And we have been shooting up the charts on the Apple charts and all the other charts. I believe we were up to number 25 in self-improvement and 40 in education. And I just want to say I am incredibly grateful for all of you that are joining us. If you are new to EFT Tapping Emotional Freedom Techniques, make sure to go check out our website at thetappingsolution.com. Or more importantly, go download our app, the Tapping Solution app. It's been downloaded over 3 million times. It has a 4.8 out of 5-star rating with over 17,000 reviews in the App Store. And of course, you can get it in Google Play as well. So it is a phenomenal resource. So go check that out. So let's jump into today's episode, what we're going to discuss today and why you want to tune in. First off, I'm going to help set you free from a very common mental chain that we all struggle with that severely limits our lives. I'm going to help you to flip a switch in your belief system so that you can see your path forward differently. We are, of course, in this process going to do some tapping. Super excited about the tapping that we have ready for today. I'm also going to cover the number one battle that everyone will ever fight, which is really the most important battle you'll ever fight. We're also going to talk about what people get wrong in their quest to create an easier life. I'm going to love talking about this because it's such a simple switch in how you look at things. And all of this is centered around the question of what are you doing when nobody is watching? And we're going to discuss why that matters. So let's jump right in. The first thing I actually want to talk about is something that I call the illusion of comparison. The illusion that comparing our lives to somebody else's life is ever an equal comparison. Every single one of us is on a different journey. We come from different parents and have a different genetics and grow up in different cultures with different family members and different friends and different teachers and different levels of wealth and opportunity and feelings of safety and love. We have different experiences. So in order to compare one person to another fairly, it would probably take an algebraic equation that not even the best mathematicians in the world could solve. Point being, there is no way to compare fairly. So all the comparison that we all do in a half a second, 50 times per day is an illusion. It is not real and it does not serve us. What does serve us is to recognize that comparison is an illusion and to recognize that each of us is on our own path, because every moment of every day that we spend comparing, we are not focused on our path forward. We're not focused on figuring out what we want to achieve and what type of person we want to become and what things we can do now to get there, as well as what we can do to just be happy and grateful and enjoy what we're experiencing right now. Now, I do recognize that trying to get us to never compare is likely impossible. As I've mentioned before, we evolved from the tribe, and so our brain is always still trying to fit in. And so we have to observe other people in that process at times. But what I want to challenge you to do is to recognize and work to consistently remind yourself that comparison is an illusion, because you never get to see somebody else's full journey and full experience. You never get to see their struggles and failures. You never get to see what they are doing when nobody is watching. Which leads me to the second area I want to cover, although I do want to remember at the end of this episode to talk about a concept I call down comparison, but more on that in a bit. So if we can't see other people's worlds and they can't see ours, then really all we're ever doing is within our own heads. That's why the second thing I want to discuss today is that the number one battle that everyone will ever fight is the battle within their own mind. This is the fight over what actions we take, exercise or not exercise, eat the cake or don't eat the cake, ask a girl or boy out or don't, start the business or don't, watch Netflix or read a book. The fight over what you believe about yourself as well. The I can't do this or I can do this. The I'm not smart or I can figure anything out. Most of these things happen when nobody is watching. And it is these things that we do when nobody is watching that drive the bulk of our success or failures in any area of life, as well as our level of fulfillment in the process. When you see somebody who is fit and healthy, you don't see the daily struggles that got them there, the exercising when they didn't want to, the eating a salad when all they really wanted to do was to throw the salad across the room and order pizza. I know, because I wanted to do that lots of times in my life. The putting the fork down because they were full, even though there was more on the plate. When you see the successful entrepreneur, you don't see the 3 failed businesses that they had before the current one. I can tell you that I failed in a business. I had a 5-year real estate investment business that failed and tanked, and most people don't see that failure. They also don't see the times that the entrepreneur felt like a failure and that they weren't smart enough or good enough, but they kept going. What you see is the success and confidence they reach now. Know that nobody will ever feel your failures the way you feel them, and nobody will ever feel your success in what you overcame the way that you feel them. The battles that you fight and the success you seek or the failures you endure will all be internal. For those of us like you and me who choose to try to better ourselves, we are always on a path to seek a new level of emotion and feeling and experience. Now, sadly, the external success that so many seek, where they want others to see their success, typically is very hollow when achieved. So if comparison is an illusion and we are always just battling within our own minds, what can we do to create new levels of happiness and joy and success and fulfillment and health? First, I'm going to suggest we all take a deep breath in and acknowledge that we're not in a race. You're not racing against anyone. And every second of every day that you mentally allow yourself to compare to others and be in a race, you will struggle with stress and anxiety and feelings of not being enough. But when you stop and acknowledge that you are on your own unique journey, that allows you to bring your focus back to your journey, to your path forward, so that you can enjoy life more fully. We'll tap on this in just a few minutes also to really feel this and allow this to sink in. But first, I'm going to share 3 things with you to help you bring your attention away from comparison and those feelings of not enoughness to being on your path of peace and fulfillment and joy and success. So number 1, what you have to do is you have to choose your problems. If you listen to last week's episode, you'll remember that I shared a 6-step process for making goals enjoyable. I talked about getting clear and building your 10x goals, but more importantly, that 10x vision for you. I talked about choosing your first steps forward and figuring out which habits you need to put in place that 10x version of you would have. I talked about creating structure and setting up your environment. I talked about saying no and how change is created more by what we say no to than what we say yes to. I talked about building our habit muscles and sticking to our habits. And I talked about fighting for your future, fighting for that path that we choose. All of those things require facing problems, but they're the problems or challenges, depending on how you frame it, that we choose. Now, we can't always choose our challenges. When we lose a loved one or a spouse cheats on us or we get injured and can't exercise, we're not choosing that challenge. But the more you choose the direction you want to go in, the more you choose your path and fight to stay on your path, the more you will both enjoy your life and move towards a better and better life. Whether you make easy daily decisions or hard daily decisions, you will face problems. Life is full of problems and you will continue to have problems. So choose which problems you want to face. Choose problems that you have to overcome to go in the direction you want to go. Or what will happen is you'll face problems that will move you in whatever random area life chooses. And choose to face problems now, because the reality is that if you don't, life will give you harder problems later. The path of least resistance, the easy path, we talked about it last week, with how our brains like the path of least resistance is generally not the best path. If you don't make time for the challenge of exercising and eating well, you'll have to make time for the challenge of illness later. If you don't make time for the challenge of working on a relationship now, you'll have to deal with the challenge of loneliness later. If you don't make time for the challenge of growing your business or career now, you'll have to deal with the challenge of tough financial times later. People who are happy and have rich lives generally choose those paths, regardless of the challenges they had to face. They choose which paths they want to go in and they move in that direction. So let's jump to number 2. Number 2 is you have to do hard things. Now, let me clarify this here. Doing hard things doesn't mean having a hard life. Most people mistake making their day-to-day life easier as creating an easier life. That is simply not the case, right? So if you choose to not exercise because it's easier, it leads to a lack of energy and ill health down the road. Not doing hard things may be easier now, but it will inevitably be harder later. If you take easy actions, you'll have a hard life. If you take hard actions, you'll have an easy life. And this has a compounding effect. So if you're taking easy action after easy action after easy action, it will compound to when you get to a point where your life is just really hard. Or if you take hard actions and you keep doing the tough things and you keep eating the frog, you keep doing those things, it will compound and your life will get easier and easier over time. And the best part about this is that this is where your character is formed. This is where you build your confidence. This is where you build your pride in yourself. This is where you build your belief of being enough. Remember, just because you're struggling when you're doing all these things, when you're doing the hard work, it doesn't mean you're failing. Let me say that again. Just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. Be purposeful in choosing the hard things that you can do today to make your tomorrow easier and to build your happiness and fulfillment. Choose your problems and choose to do the hard things now. And know that the hard things will come with failures. In fact, they will come with far more failures than the easy things. But here's the thing. There isn't a successful person that I know that did not struggle and fail, right? For example, I actually know a good friend of mine who invests in companies. And whenever he decides if he's going to invest in a company and in that person, he first wants to know if they have failed before, because he knows that in those failures is where you learn and you grow. Now, most people that are more successful than you have likely failed more than you have. So do the hard things. Fail a lot and fail forward. We are always so adverse to failing, but the reality is that the more successful you become, the more you will fail and continue to fail forward. So there's one really important key mental shift that I want to remind you of with this. I talked about this a little bit last week, is focus on that 10x version of you. So track your habits, celebrate each time you accomplish a habit, and keep focusing on that 10x version of you to bring that version into you. So let's jump to number 3. Do the things that matter when nobody is watching. That's the topic of our podcast episode today. Do the things that matter when nobody is watching. So when you choose the path that you want, remember that nobody will see you. When you do the hard things day in and day out, nobody will see you. When you work on yourself and you read the books and you listen to the podcast and you do the tapping, nobody will see you. When you exercise every day, nobody will see you. When you put down the fork, nobody will see you. When you work on your relationship with your spouse or significant other, nobody outside of you two will see you. When you stare blankly at that computer screen and you struggle and you keep at it day after day until you accomplish what you want, nobody will see you. But maybe in a month or 3 months or 6 months or a year or 5 years, somebody will look at you and say, wow, you seem different. You look more confident and happy and healthy, and it seems like life is going really well for you. And by that point, you'll probably just smirk and think to yourself, yeah, you have no idea of the work I put in when nobody was looking. And no matter what you say to that person, you'll never be able to make them understand the challenges you went through. But you'll feel them, you'll know them, and you'll be proud of what you did because you realized you weren't in a race with anyone else. And you never were. And you'll be excited because you'll know that they haven't seen anything yet. This is why it matters what you do when nobody is watching. This is where your dreams are built. This is where your courage and confidence is built. This is where your happiness and joy is built. So, are you ready to do some tapping to bring it all together? I love bringing it all together with some tapping. Although, before I do that, let's talk about down comparison. I want to explain what that means. What so often happens when we compare with others is we do what I call up comparison. We compare to the person who has more than us, the person who is more successful or more fit or has more followers on Instagram or Facebook or has a better paying job or drives a better car or has a bigger house, or whatever the case may be. What we don't ever do, what we don't focus on, is down comparison. Now, down comparison, what I mean by that is to compare to people who you're further ahead on. Again, it's not a race, but people where you have things they don't. And I don't mean to say this in a way to go, you down compare to say, oh, I'm better than them. Look what I have that they don't. Look at the house I have they don't. Look at the car I drive that they don't. What I mean by down comparison is to compare in a way that leads to you feeling gratitude, of feeling, hey, you know what? This house isn't as big as that person's, but man, I've got a house. I've got a roof over my head, and it's the third house I bought now, and it's bigger than the last one and bigger than the one before, and it's newer, and it has more of the things that I want, and the car that I drive now is safe, and it's newer, and I used to drive this really beat up car, and look at what I have now. Let me compare to other people in my life or other people out there who I'm succeeding more than. What are the things that you overcame, that you accomplished that other people haven't yet? What are the things that you've done? So recognize that if you're going to do what I call up comparison, also do down comparison. Compare to the people that you have more than, that you're fortunate and lucky for, and that you're grateful for the fact that you have more than them. So recognize that, because remember, our brains are wired with the negativity bias to find the things that are wrong, to find the things that we don't have. And so we constantly do that up comparison. And guess what? On Instagram, on social media, and all those places, we see people's best lives. We don't see the things they're struggling with. We don't see when they're struggling in their marriage. We don't see when they're struggling with their health. We don't see what they do when nobody is watching. So if you're going to up compare, remember to also down compare, and to recognize the things that you're grateful for, that you know are things that 10 years ago you only dreamed of having. I know, for example, for me, if I could have looked at the life I live now with my home and my wife and my 3 kids and all the things that I have 10 years ago, it would have been a dream come true. I wouldn't have believed that that was going to be possible for me. I would have dreamed of it, but to have it is incredible. But it's easy for me, it's easy, as we all do, to compare to somebody else who is more successful or has a nicer house or something different. It's what we do naturally. So it's important to also down compare, to go, hey, I'm so lucky with what I have right now. I'm so lucky for the life I live and the people I have in my life and my kids and my health and the car I drive, that it works, it doesn't break down, and all the things that we can compare to where other people in our community or in the world that they don't have those things. So just a quick explanation there on what down comparison is, and hopefully that helps you as well. So let's get to doing some tapping. Let's bring it all together, what we talked about today about doing the work when nobody is watching. And specifically, we're going to tap a little bit about that feeling of not enoughness. Because when we compare to others on social media or in other places, we have those feelings of not enoughness, that we're always behind. It's an incredibly common feeling that pretty much everybody I ever ask feels, as they think, I'm not as far along as I should be. I'm behind. So we're going to tap to allow some of those feelings to go away, to recognize what we have, and to release those feelings of not enoughness. So let's go ahead and take a deep breath in all together. Go ahead and take a deep breath in. And breathe out. And I want you to connect with, how do you compare with other people? In what ways do you feel like you're not enough? What are the things that, if you compare yourself to others right now, who is it on Instagram or social media that triggers you, and where you go, you're critical of them because they have something you don't have? Remember, anybody who's ever critical of you, they're only critical of you when they don't have what you have. Right? We're not critical of people that have things that we've also accomplished and reached. Generally, when we are comparing ourselves to others, it is because we are feeling a lack within ourselves of what we don't have, or what we haven't accomplished, or what's missing in our lives. So just notice that for yourself. And maybe we can say to ourselves and measure on a scale of 0 to 10. Remember, we always measure on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is low or 10 is very high. How true does it feel in that comparison that you feel like you're not enough? If you say, I'm not enough, if you say it out loud or in your head, depending where you are, how true does that feel on a scale of 0 to 10? We're going to measure now, and we're going to measure again at the end after the tapping. So let's go ahead and start tapping on the side of the hand, on the karate chop point, even though I keep thinking that I'm not enough somehow. And go ahead and repeat after me. And it holds me back. I accept myself anyway. And we're going to keep tapping right there on the side of the hand, even though I compare myself to others too much. Rather than staying on my path, I accept myself anyway. And again, we're going to do one more time right there on the side of the hand. Even though I focus too much on other people's end result, I acknowledge that I'm human and that's normal. And we're going to move to the eyebrow point. I choose to recognize the illusion of comparison. Side of the eye, and recognize that I am not racing anyone. Under the eye, the only battle I fight, under the nose, is with my daily decisions. On the chin point, sometimes it's easy. Collarbone point, and sometimes it's really hard. Under the arm, I choose to consciously choose my path forward. Top of the head, and choose the challenges I'll face. We'll go back to the eyebrow point. I choose to do the hard things. Side of the eye, so that I can have an easier life. Under the eye, and a more fulfilled life. Under the nose, I choose to do the things that matter. Chin point, when nobody is watching. Collarbone point, I choose to focus on my path forward. Under the arm, even if that makes me feel different at times. Top of the head, I choose to focus on what I can create. Eyebrow point, and I choose to put in the work. Side of the eye, and create a life I love. Under the eye, I choose personal responsibility over blame. Under the nose, I choose to do the work when nobody is watching. Chin point, I am just as capable as anyone else. Collarbone point, I can build my skills. Under the arm, and compound my talent one day at a time. Top of the head, just like an engine taking off, it may take some time. Eyebrow point, it may feel like I'm not going anywhere for a while. Side of the eye, but my speed and inertia will build. Under the eye, one day at a time. Under the nose, until I finally take off. Chin point, and soar higher and higher. Collarbone point, I can do this. Under the arm, I choose to do the work when nobody is watching. Top of the head, I've got this. Go ahead and stop there and just take a deep breath in. And breathe out. And just notice what you feel in your body. Notice if you feel more relaxed. Notice what thoughts came up for you as you were doing the tapping. Did you question some of those beliefs of not being enough? Let's go ahead and check in again. So when you think about either a particular comparison that you have or just that feeling of not being enough, when you say it out loud to yourself right now, I'm not enough, what comes up for you? Is there a little twinge that goes, that's not true. That's just how you felt. Let's check in on a scale of 0 to 10. If it was an 8 before, maybe it was a 9. What is it now? Is it a 6? Is it a 4? Is it a 2? In whatever that number is, it's okay. Most of the time it's just for people, but sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, it's just giving us feedback that we have to go deeper on a particular issue or a particular emotion. It's all just feedback. Notice what feels different after doing that tapping. Do you feel more of a sense of yeah, I can do this. I need to stop comparing to others. I need to start to do the work when nobody is watching. I've been comparing myself to others. I've been going through that illusion of comparison, and I need to let that go. I need to find my path forward. I need to follow those 6 steps that Alex talked about in the last podcast episode. Go check that out. Go check that out and make sure to learn those 6 steps and follow those 6 steps. And remember, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to choose the problems in your life that you want to go after. You either choose the problems now, choose the challenges now, or life will throw you the challenges that don't push you in the direction that you want. You will, of course, always get challenges that you don't choose for, that don't help you, but many of the challenges we face, we get to choose. So choose those. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I want to ask you to share this podcast episode. If you enjoyed the podcast episode, make sure to share it with others. DM me on Instagram and tell me what you thought of it. One of the things I wish I had more of with the podcast is more feedback. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you want me to cover. Let me know. Leave me a review of the podcast. Let me know in the comments there. But above all else, keep coming back. Keep listening in. Keep showing up. The most difficult decisions we make every day is to show up. It's the getting up early. It's the starting the workout. It's starting the difficult task. It's asking the tough questions of yourself. Doing the work. It's showing up for yourself. So keep showing up for yourself. Keep doing the tapping. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, keep tapping.